Hello everyone, my name is Griffin Swanson and I'm the channel product manager here at Professional Advantage for our company data archive module built for Microsoft Dynamics GP. And today I'm going to be walking you through the actual setup of the archive process itself, which is very straightforward everyone. If we go to the admin section here in Dynamics GP, scroll down on the utilities section here, you can see we have this feature called Company Data Archive. And what this is going to allow us to do here is create a destination company, which is where all of our historical data is going to be sent to from our originating company, which is the live production company here, allowing us to pick and choose which modules we want to transfer and remove. So let's start at the top here with the destination company. Again, this is going to be the archive company in which you set up, where all of your historical data is going to be transferred to. You notice we do have a button here that allows you to review all of your historical archives should you need to go back and see any of that history that you've already performed. Now, once you've set up the archive company here, you're then going to specify the originating company. So this is going to be your live production company where all of that data is coming from. Now, once you have both of those companies selected, you're then going to specify your archive date here. So let's go ahead and put a date here for 12/31/2013. And what this is basically telling me here is everything on and previous to that date then is subject to archive as long as that data is in the history tables or fully applied. Now you notice here we have the ability to archive by a document date or a GL posting date. We see most customers use the GL posting date, but if you go off of a calendar date, we will see some companies use this document date here. The GL posting date is for companies who are GL centric, posting in their fiscal periods. Now directly below that you see an option here to print a detailed report. That is not required, but it is highly recommended by us when doing the archive. That's going to give you reports of data that came across during that archive session, as well as reports of data that did not come across. So if something wasn't considered historical or fully applied, this detailed report here is going to tell you why something did or did not successfully archive. And then directly below that, you can see we have the option here to archive these core GP tables with the ability here to both transfer and remove that data, which essentially gives us three options when running this archive process. Now, the first and by far the most common practice is to have both columns selected. What we're doing here is we're transferring our historical data from our live company into the archive company, and then deleting or removing that data out of your live production. Second option we have here is to run a transfer only, and that's just making a copy of the data from your live company into the archive company. And you might be sitting there wondering, okay, well, why would anybody want to do that? We'll see some customers do this as a verification process. And so what I mean by that is you could run this transfer only, go into your archive company, make sure that everything you've transferred across was brought over successfully before coming back in and selecting this remove option. Now, once you've done that, you will run the archive process again. And don't worry, once you transfer that data, it is not going to duplicate that in your archive company. Again, it's just verifying that it's already been transferred before it removes or deletes that data out of your live production company. And then the third and final option that we have here is to run a remove only. But as you can see, by default, we're not going to allow you to do that. And for obvious reasons, right? We don't want customers coming in here, especially during their first initial archive, and just start removing or purging data. However, in our company data archive registration window, which we'll drill into here in just a minute, we do have the option there to purely delete or remove data. So I'll go into more detail as to why we make that available in this registration window in just a couple of minutes here. But just know by default and best practice, we are not going to allow you to remove only. Now, a couple of other archiving options we have here on this window. We'll go over to the right-hand side here. You see a checkbox that it's called Transfer Master Data. Master data would be anything under the cards or setup menus that you have in GP, which include things like your address IDs, shipping methods, tax detail, really your core customer vendor information. You will want to transfer this master data the first time you perform an archive, but once that's been copied across to your archive company, we understand that that information isn't changing nearly as often as your transactional data. So rather than copying it across every time you do perform an archive, you can see here it is optional, to save you time. And then directly below that, we also have the option here to transfer user-defined tables. So basically, if you wanted to copy something across to your archive company that doesn't reside in these core GP tables here, you can use this option that allows you to write the exact SQL table name. And what you can do is you can enter those tables one by one, or as you can see in my example here, I have this little asterisk character at the end of these tables. That is going to act as a wildcard field. So all of the tables in your live company that begin with these characters here, they would be subject to archive for you. However, there are two restrictions if you plan on using this option. First, this is not date specific. So regardless of the cutoff date that you entered for your archive here, it is going to copy all of the historical information within these tables. The other restriction is that it does not delete or remove any of that data. It is simply transferring it across to your archive company. So keep those in mind. A lot of times we're not seeing huge amounts of data in our customers' third-party tables. So generally customers are not worried about this. However, we do have a handful of customers that want to be able to both transfer and remove third-party data. So if you notice here, everyone, I am demonstrating our CDA professional version for you today. That allows you to archive this core GP data. But directly below that, you can see we have an option here called CDA Plus, which is an add-on to the professional version, but that would allow users to not only transfer, but also remove that third-party data, and you would see those modules show up under the additional products. If that is something that you're interested in, you can reach out to us at professionaladvantage.com and submit a form on our contact page. With that being said, everyone, when you're ready to start the archive, you're going to click this process button in the top left-hand corner. We are going to give you a pop-up reminder to take a backup process of your GP system, just in case anything happens during that archive. During this archive process, it is going to enable this pause and resume buttons here when archiving payables and receivables data. Below this pause and resume button, we're going to give you an estimated time remaining for that particular archive, and we're also going to show you the number of blocks of customers or vendors that have been archived as well. And I'm going to go into more detail with those things once we get into this registration window here. But before I do that, I have a couple of recommendations when you plan to run this archive. Number one, we do recommend running this process during your off-peak business hours because it does take up a large amount of resources from SQL to run the actual archive process. And number two, we're also going to recommend that your users are logged out of GP during that archive process as well. So for example, everyone, if you were to start that archive on a weekday night, you let the process run overnight and return the next day to see the archive has not finished yet, you can pause your archive, allow your users to resume their regular GP activity, and then resume the archive later that evening. And honestly, we'll see a lot of our customers run the archive on the weekend, giving them that 48-hour plus period to let the archive finish. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with our company data archive scheduler, which essentially allows you to automate this process, we have created a video for that as well on our YouTube page, and you can see that feature listed here. And then the last feature that I want to cover here in the archiving window before we drill into this registration window, everyone, is going back into the destination company. And I know I highlighted this at the beginning, but this is going to pull open your archive log, showing you a history trail here of all the past archives you've run. You're going to see how long that archive took, which modules you selected, as well as your other archiving options. And I do want to mention here, everyone, and please note, you will need a system admin or DynSA rights to actually perform the archive itself. Once that archive is complete, we do have this details tab down here at the bottom, which is going to pull open your activity tracking, showing you the number of records that were transferred and or removed during that archive process. So that is the archiving window in itself, everyone. As I previously mentioned, I do want to hop right into this registration window to cover these additional archiving options. For starters, let's talk about this checkbox here that would allow you to remove data without transferring, so essentially allowing to purely delete your data with Company Data Archive. Again, by default, we are not going to allow you to do that. It is not a best practice that we recommend. However, every now and then we get customers who reach out to us, typically those who have been using Company Data Archive for several years, or those who are at least very comfortable with the archiving process, and their request is to be able to purely delete or purge data with our tool. So again, we do make that option readily available here. You can also set a minimum cutoff date here as well. So if you know that you don't want anything touched or archived, let's say in your most current 3, 4, 5 years, you can set a minimum cutoff date there. And then you'll also be able to change the number of customers or vendors per SQL transaction. But 2 things to note if you plan on changing this block size here. Number 1, the larger the block size, the faster your archive will perform. However, number 2, the larger the block size, the longer it will take to pause your archiving process if you need to stop it for any reason. So just know when you're archiving the payables or receivables data, this tool will need to complete the current block of customers or vendors it's archiving before that process can be paused. So that is the standard way to set up your company data archive sessions. For those of you who have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us at professionaladvantage.com and submit a form on our contact page.